This video is brought to you by Sporlan, quality, integrity, and tradition. Well, we got a walk-in freezer not working, and it's pretty full of stuff. But they just got a delivery right now, that's why it's like that. I walked in here, they're complaining that it's warm in here. The thermostat says 31 degrees. You get a little ice accumulation there, but there's no ice on the coils. So we're gonna start up on the roof and see what's going on up there. So we walk onto the roof, and I can already hear it. Let's open this guy up. Walk-in freezers, this compressor to the right, and we're off on a bypass. So it's like a pressure relief between suction and discharge inside, usually because of an overheat situation. So let's come over here, see what's going on with the rack. And the rack is plugged solid, so that's why we got a plugged up condenser on this bad boy. So we'll put gauges on it, but this sound that we're hearing is a internal pressure relief, and it's a safety protection that the compressor has built into it. When the pressure differential gets to be too big between high and low, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's basically bypassing to save itself. So the only way to do this is to reset it, let the pressures calm down, and then start it over.
All right, there is so much information. I'm going to stop the video here real quick, and I want to show you guys something, and this is going to help you greatly, okay? When you're working on something, especially a Copeland product, this is really easy. All you got to do is Google search Copeland Mobile. Okay, Copeland Mobile, click on the link. A lot of things, guys, all you got to do is ask the Google. Now, this is an app-based program, okay, that you can download to your phone, but they also have a desktop version. So I'm looking at the desktop version right now, but you can download it on Android and or the Apple Store. All kinds of great information. So I'm going to click the desktop version, accept their terms. I already looked for this compressor, so here's my model number, ZF13K4E-TF5. You're going to select your situation. I'm doing low temperature, 233 phase right here. We're going to click this one, and here's my compressor information. There's so much valuable information on this Copeland Mobile application, okay? So we're going to scroll through this really quick. Mechanical, you can find out what size, how much oil. Electrical, if it's a single phase compressor, they'll have your capacitor information on here. You can find all that. This basically tells you all the necessary electrical information, the winding resistance, okay, performance information, information about where to get it. You can cross the compressor over to something else. If you can't find this compressor, here's a replacement for it. If it's a compressor that they've discontinued, they'll have a superseded number right here. Diagnostics, nomenclature, drawings, but this is one of my favorite features, is service parts, guys. If you ever worked in refrigeration and you work on OEM racks like this, sometimes the manufacturer of the rack will order a specific compressor that you cannot get at the normal supply house. It's very difficult to get an actual Rotolock compressor anymore. It's a steel welded fitting that has a Rotolock adapter already built onto the compressor. When you go to the normal supply house to get a replacement compressor, oftentimes they will only have a sweat compressor with weld-on connections but no Rotolock connections, okay? If you go right here under service parts, look at right here, you have your part numbers for the actual Rotolock valves. Here's the discharge Rotolock. This will either go in the fitting, the half-inch fitting on the compressor, or over it, depending on the size. And then you also have the suction one. But if you go to view others, look right here. Here is the adapter. It's a Rotolock to sweat adapter for the discharge. So this is going to be a half-inch to a 1-inch, okay? And then also, that's a 1-inch Rotolock. And then on the suction side, you're going to have an 1.25-inch Rotolock adapter to a 7/8 inch sweat adapter. Now, these are going to be brass fittings. You have to solder those on. but they are great, and this is really great information on here. If you ever need a replacement compressor, it does not come with the DTC valve, and I recommend personally, if you're going to change a compressor, you change the DTC valve. The DTC valve is a discharge temperature control, and or the easiest way to understand it is a temperature responsive expansion valve. It's an expansion valve that is not adjustable, that at a certain temperature, it opens and closes to cool off the compressor. The simplest way to understand it, okay? Here's the part numbers, because oftentimes some of the supply houses might be confused, don't know it. I go to my supply house with the part number. Half the time I'll go to the supply house's website and put the part numbers in and make sure they have it before I even show up, okay? So lots of great information. Another great resource on this Copeland Mobile application, now again, is something called the AE Bulletins. Okay, AE Bulletins is actually an app you can download for your phone, but I'm on the desktop version. We click on AE Bulletins, okay? And what we're going to do is I want to search application and engineering bulletins, okay? And what I'm going to do, actually click right here, is I'm going to do application engineering bulletins right here. And then I'm going to go to compressors, okay? But you can find all sorts of other information. I'll go back here. You can click on the types of compressors that you're going to use. If I go back to the engineering bulletins, you've got, I mean, all kinds of things. Tons of information about controllers, motor protectors, motors, condensers, so all sorts of information. So I'm going to hit refrigeration compressors, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to find our compressor information, okay? So I've got a ZF compressor, application guidelines for low temperature 1 to 2.5 horsepower. That's not actually the one that I want, okay? So we're going to go to, we can actually do a search right here. So if we go up here to ZF 13K4E. Let's input that and hit search. And here we go. Application guidelines for K4 refrigeration scroll compressors, 2 to 9 horsepower. When we click on that, what we're going to find is a lot of great information on here about this compressor and the important protection devices. So if you want to find out about liquid injection, boom, it explains how the liquid injection works, okay? I get so many questions about that. And it's really not that difficult, but it's confusing because, you know, someone will go up and they're like, what is this thing, you know? So it explains it. It explains how it works. It even gives you part numbers and stuff, okay? So I'm going to go back up here to the top, and it also explains the compressor's protection devices built into it, okay? So the IPR valve. If we go right here, the IPR valve have internal pressure relief valves with opens at a discharge to suction differential. So understand it's the difference between discharge and suction of 375 to 450 psi. The high pressure hot gas is diverted to the motor protector, and then eventually it will trip the motor protector. Now in my situation, it wasn't tripped as of yet. More than likely it had reset itself, and then it tried to start again or something, who knows, okay? But you also have information about the motor protector, the oil charge. Guys, so much great information. So definitely check out the Copeland Mobile application.
I was going to put my gauges on it, but we're not going to. We'll just shut it down because there's no sense right now. Okay, walk-in freezer is system G, as in George, right here. But we're gonna have to shut down the whole rack so we can clean it. So we got it shut down. Now we're gonna disassemble this guy, give it a thorough cleaning, and then we'll troubleshoot after that. With everything turned off, what the best thing to do is actually put these panels on so that way the water doesn't drip onto the compressors. The other side has a catch pan, and then let it sit. We're going to use the brightener cleaner because that's the heavy duty one. Rinse it out, and then we got to clean the trough out, and you'll see that when we're all done too. So we started by rinsing from the top down. Now we're going to rinse from up here and just kind of knock the big chunks down, and then we'll apply cleaner, trying to get some of this big stuff off of there. But look at how dirty that is. And it's crazy too because that was cleaned like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. And it just comes back. This restaurant, we have a couple of them that this pollen crap attacks it. And I don't know if you guys saw right here, I have a swamp cooler that I had to install. I mean, if you guys are OG, you might remember, but I had to install this swamp cooler because we've changed that compressor probably 3 times. All because it just keeps going off on high pressure bypass basically, or not high pressure, but bypass, because it's just locking itself out. So we put this on to help cool the rack, and it's primarily just blowing on the walk-in freezer side. It's just probably marginally sized. Look at the steam just coming off the compressor because of how much it's been overheating. We're gonna be lucky if this compressor is not bad, because the customer told me that this started yesterday and they waited until today to call. So this thing's been going off on bypass for a while, and if that happens enough, the chingus that bypasses goes bad, which I've had happen on this exact compressor, which sucks. So we'll have to see. When you guys are cleaning these racks, I've shown this before, this is specific to the Kyrac racks. I want you to see something. There's a giant trough over the compressors that catches the water, keeps them from falling on the compressors. You have to clean that trough out. And if you don't, what happens is, hold on, all the mud just gets stuck in there. And then when the water evaporates, the mud sucks back up onto the condenser. So you gotta make sure you're cleaning those troughs out when you're doing these. Just get up in there with the hose, wash that stuff out, or you're just gonna be back. Even still here, it just plugs up, but you've gotta make sure you clean those troughs out. So we'll apply the cleaner and then just let it sit and do its magic. And we'll probably do another, we'll probably rinse this and then do another bit of it just to be safe. Make sure we get all the big stuff out, but we're being very cautious not to get the motor. This cleaner is highly corrosive, so be very cautious. All right, we let it sit for about 5-6 minutes while I was cleaning out the coil gun. So that's something I do, is I always clean out my coil gun to make sure that there's no corrosive chemicals left in it. And then now we're just going to town, rinsing this guy out, getting the big chunks out, and it's just nice and slow. It's not a race because we want it to be perfectly clean when we're done. Literally got to go row by row to make sure you get everything out of there. And you know, I said on the last clip we want it to be perfect. I mean, it's never going to be absolutely perfect. You just do the best that you can, get majority of the stuff out, and then the key is going to be to get that trough clean when we're done. That'll give us, no joke, we'll be out here in another 3 weeks, but at least we get some time, you know, in between these calls. By having these panels, it keeps all this water that's coming down from unnecessarily dripping on the compressor. And while it will probably be okay, it's just a good idea to do that. Now, another thing we need to do is yeah, very thoroughly, we'll change the setting to the shower setting, and then wash all this stuff down. Just double check, wash the sides, the tops, just to get all the coil cleaner. You see, like, there's coil cleaner, and then you come over here, and it's sitting there, and all that stuff is going to become corrosive and cause a problem. So you always want to wash all that stuff off, being super thorough. And I know this is this seems time consuming and silly, but you got to take the time. Even if you're going to be back in 3 weeks, you've got to take the time and do it right. That way it lasts as long as possible. So while we're rinsing over there, you can actually see over here that there's no water coming out of that drain. There's a drain right here. It's just plugged, you know. Now it actually drains down, but yeah, that trough is a real big problem. While it saves the compressor from getting wet, and the same thing, like when it rains outside, it really does a good job of keeping the compressors from getting too wet, but the stuff just builds up in there. Got the panels back in, so we're gonna attempt to turn this guy back on. There's the ice machines. Nice and slow turning them on. Okay, it's going to take a minute for the condenser fan motors to cycle because they are on fan cycle controls. Motors right here. Look at that compressor steaming like crazy, man. That thing's hot. Let's hope that this thing's not permanently damaged. All right, we are running. We're going to get, and you notice the head pressure is dropping because we have a wet condenser, and you know, it's evaporating that water. So the motors are probably going to cycle on and off a few times. But we're going to go get a thermometer down in the box, kind of watch it stabilize out for a while. While we're waiting for it to come down to temperature, I came over here and the swamp cooler's dry. It doesn't have any water in it, and the water float was like stuck in an off position. It's weird. I don't like these cheap ass floats, they're junk. So we're gonna get this guy running and make sure that it actually works, because this swamp cooler has to work in this heat for sure. All right, we got the swamp cooler running. I'm gonna talk to them about putting new pads, a float, and a water pump, because it's time to rebuild that guy for this summer. The pads are just super hard. The system's running, it's coming down in temperature. We're gonna tell them to keep an eye on it. I'm sure that's gonna help it a lot. It seems like the compressor is gonna be okay. So at this point, we're not gonna watch paint dry, because it'd take probably 2.5 hours for that box to come down to temp. It was a good 30 degrees in there, so it's gonna take some time, especially with the product being that high. But this evaporative cooler, we have it set on a temperature controller, so that way it turns on and off when it needs to, and it's literally there just helping cool off the walk-in freezer. So with that not working, the dirty condenser and the heat over the weekend, we hit about 105. Definitely, this thing was just struggling. So I'm gonna have a talk with the customer too, because they're lucky if that compressor is not bad, because when this freezer goes down, they need to call us. They waited. They just dealt with it through the weekend, and I appreciate that, but you know, it's like, man, I'm gonna have to change the compressor now, you know? So we're gonna put all the screws back in the panels and just keep monitoring it. It is running and it's getting cold, and it's at 13 degrees, so we're gonna tell them to keep an eye on it, and that's it for now.
I realized that maybe I didn't explain everything enough in this video, okay? What happens when you have experience, and you've seen this happen a lot, is I can walk up and I can hear that sound from the compressor and know exactly what's going on already. Now, I do have history at this restaurant too. Like I said, we've changed this compressor like 3 times, okay? Now, we solved the problem by really getting on them, by putting that swamp cooler on there. And in my opinion, the equipment is just marginally sized, and it always happens that it fails. The compressor fails in a inopportune time, so you don't really have time to plan. In a perfect world, honestly, I would have talked the customer into letting me order a condensing unit and pulling it off the rack. That way the condenser is adequately sized, the compressor is adequately sized, and we get a receiver that's big enough for the system, okay? But, you know, you just got to deal with what you got to deal with on some of these things. So when I walked up, I could clearly hear that the compressor was bypassing. I knew what was happening. Walked over, found that the condenser was plugged, and then eventually found that the swamp cooler that cools off the rack wasn't working either. I will note that that swamp cooler is highly inefficient. It is a massive waste of energy, but it does serve a purpose because it blows cooler air to help keep this system from going off on high head pressure and or bypass. Another thing to understand too is the pressure control settings. It is important to make sure that you set your pressure controls appropriately, but in the summertime, when we hit 105, 110, sometimes 115, hell, one year we hit 120. This equipment, it's not rated for that, okay? And we will have nuisance pressure control trips, and that just causes issues. We end up having to go with auto reset on our pressure controls. If we put manual reset, I realize manual reset is the smartest way to go. I will literally be out there every time it hits 100 degrees resetting that pressure control, okay? So this equipment essentially is designed to fail because it's not set up to operate in the higher ambient temperatures. This particular rack manufacturer would size these racks and they would send them out all over the place, and in my opinion, they just never size them appropriately for the extreme ambient conditions that we get. And then you add into the fact that the restaurants don't do, you know, monthly preventative maintenances anymore. This particular restaurant does do a maintenance program, but it's like every 3 months, I think, or something like that. But it's not every month. And even if it was every month, they typically don't want to pay you for 16 hours to go through and do everything properly. You end up having to just kind of, you know, go in there and just change filters, check belts, move on, you know, and then 1 month you come out and you clean everything. So it's never a full maintenance every single time. But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. So that leads to the failures of the compressors and issues with it, okay? But understanding how the compressors work is so important. Checking out that Copeland information I gave you guys, those engineering bulletins, those are amazing. They have so much useful information. They explain everything so thoroughly, and it really does help you to understand. So I highly encourage you guys to research some of that information. The next thing I'm going to say is I highly encourage you guys to tear a compressor apart. if you ever have a failed compressor, now I am not an expert, okay? I could certainly not work for Copeland. I don't know enough about their compressors. I know just a little bit, okay, to help me understand. But cutting the compressors open helps you to visualize what's going on inside there. I've shown them a million times. I have a couple compressors. It's kind of funny. I don't know about you guys. Do you guys have scroll assemblies that are door stops in your house? Because my garage door, I have a scroll assembly. Like I have so many cut up compressors because I have all the parts left over. So I love cutting these things open when they failed, trying to figure out what's happened inside of them. Okay. So you've got a scroll plate assembly. They fit together. And it just kind of shows you how it operates. You've got the seal assembly on the top. I mean, there's so much great information you guys can find by cutting these things open, and you guys can play with them. Now, when you do cut open a compressor, what you're going to find is that they're extremely oily, okay? So what I do is, first off, the first compressor you cut open, you're probably going to butcher it. You kind of just remember how you cut it open. It's probably going to be cut in weird places. Once you get used to them, you kind of know the right places to cut. Cutting on the seams does help, but it takes a little bit longer. Be careful when you're cutting. Use proper PPE, glasses, gloves, all that good stuff, but a good grinder disc. And you're going to realize, too, that you start to learn how to cut them open. Like if you take the grinder disc and you just go to town, all the metal shavings from the grinder are going to go in the compressor. But if you very carefully just very carefully cut it, trying to limit the amount of grinder shavings going into the compressor, then you'll get a more true diagnosis of what's going on inside there, and you won't just see a bunch of metal shavings, okay? So when you do cut them open, like I said, it's going to be very oily. So what I will do is I will take them apart, and then I will soak them in an all-purpose degreaser. Refrigeration Technologies has a all-purpose cleaner. It's the purple Venom pack. You pour that into a bucket. You set all the parts in the bucket and you let it soak for 2-3 days. You take it out and you immediately dry it before the air really starts to activate the rusting process. It does a great job of degreasing these compressors. I'll rinse them off, dry them off, and then just set them in a dry environment. And then I have these things to inspect and use as training aids to show people. It's just fun. I'm curious. In the very beginning of my career, I never did it, but now I love cutting them open. And I usually, like on the side of my house, I think I have a couple compressors, smoke detectors that in the future I might do training with, bad parts and stuff like that. So I encourage you guys to cut that stuff open, okay? So we got this restaurant operational. I did give them a quote. We haven't done the work yet, but they did approve us to go in and rebuild that swamp cooler, put new pads. Now, whenever I do a swamp cooler rebuild, we do them annually. They get new pump, new pads, new float, sometimes a new temperature controller depending on the condition, and they'll always get new belts too. I don't necessarily change the motor itself if there's nothing wrong with it, but we always change the pump, the float, and the pads as a set, okay? Because the pumps, they fail on a regular, the throwaway items, okay? So we are going to rebuild this swamp cooler, get it operational 100% to where the float's not sticking anymore. And then while we're out there doing that, we'll probably rinse the rack off again because I guarantee it's going to be dirty. Understanding these restaurants, I know that this location, it's like 3 weeks on the dot. We have to go out and clean that rack again. It's kind of crazy. So that swamp cooler helped us by blowing cool air on there, but it still needs to be cleaned appropriately. So I really, really appreciate you guys making it to the end of this video. Please, if you haven't already, check out my website, hvacrvideos.com. You can get these shirts there, the hats there. It's just a way that you guys can support the channel. I've talked about the hats probably in nauseum, but I designed these hats purposely to just say HVACR on them right here because I didn't want them to be an advertisement for my brand per se, even though it is, but I didn't want them to be a complete obvious advertisement for my brand. That way you guys can wear these hats potentially at work and not violate uniform policies. Just says HVACR, The hats are a flex fit style hat, and I've talked about them before. They have a black underbill purposely so that way our fingers don't get them nasty. And what's interesting, you guys can't see this, but I can see light through this hat. It is not a trucker hat, but it is a very unique style in that it's extremely breathable. Your head does not sweat near as much as you do in a standard hat. Okay, so this is a very breathable hat. And when you get it, you guys will see, like when you look at the texture, I don't even know if you guys can see this, but it is it's not really going to do it justice, but it is a very breathable texture. Again, it's see-through, but it's not a trucker style, okay? They are flex fit, large, extra large, small, medium. You can choose which size you have. I don't know that, but they are flex fit style. So if you're curious what head sizes the small, medium will fit, just Google search flex fit sizing and you can find it on the internet, either a small, medium, or a large, extra large. There's other ways that you guys can support the channel. The easiest way is to simply watch the videos from start to beginning without skipping through anything, okay? By doing that, YouTube shows you guys advertisements and stuff, and YouTube pays me for that, okay? So it's very, I mean, if you want to help to support creators, watch the video from start to finish. That's the best way without skipping through anything, okay? You can also, if you guys are interested in purchasing any tools, go to truetech.tools.com. I have an offer code, big picture, one word. At the moment today, it could change tomorrow, but at the moment today, using that offer code will get you an 8% discount on your total purchase price of your order. You order $5,000 worth of crap, you can save 8%, okay? I get a small commission when you do that. If you guys know what you're going to purchase, you can shoot me an email and I can actually generate an affiliate link, and the affiliate link will help me a little bit more. I get a bigger commission, and you can also still use the offer code and still save the 8% as of today. So that's another way to help me. You can support the channel via Patreon. You can donate via PayPal, YouTube channel membership. So there's several different ways, guys. I really, really appreciate you. Live streams Monday evening, work permitting, on YouTube on my channel, and then also live streams Friday evening on the HVAC Overtime channel with my buddies, work permitting again. And yeah, that's it. We're going to wrap this one up, and we will catch you on the next one, okay?